Coming up on Chasing the Natty, we're going to call our shots on the future of some of the stars in the CFF landscape. Before the season even starts, we're going to guess whether or not those with another year of eligibility after 2023 will do one of three options. They'll either stay, declare for the draft, or transfer to somewhere else. And to help us call our shots, we have DFS guru and host of the Burning the Red Shirt podcast, Chris K, on to make sure our predictions and takes are hot enough to cause some problems on purpose. All this and more coming right after this.
Williams dancing, cutting, mesmerizing run by the quarterback.
Marvin Harrison Jr. touchdown. Marvelous Marv.
Ball next to the outside, dropped down for Franklin. Oh, majestic touchdown.
This is Chasing the Natty, a college fantasy football podcast. All right, welcome in everybody. This is Jared Palmgren, host of the Chasing Natty podcast. I hope you guys are having a wonderful ride to your work on this Monday morning. We are the college fantasy football podcast on the Campus of Canton Podcast Network. You can find us on your podcast feed and on YouTube every Monday morning at 7 a.m. If you want to support the great work that we are doing over here, head on over to campusofcanton.com and subscribe there with one of our three awesome tiers. You'll find everything you need for your CFF, Devy, and C2C leagues, including rankings, articles, tools, and so much more than even that. You can also support us by going over to our YouTube channel and subscribing and interacting with us over there, or by leaving those 5-star reviews wherever you listen to your podcast. You can also find me and the show on Twitter. I am at CFF_Jared. You can find the show at Chasing the Natty. We got a couple other awesome things coming y'all's way. First of all, Home Field. We at Campus to Canton are partnered with them with an awesome promo code discount. Just type in Campus to Canton over there, and you can get 15% off your vintage college fan gear. They got a ton of great stuff over there, so go and check to see if they have your team in stock. And then in addition to that, we got the CFF guide coming out to you all on July 1st. If you're listening to this on Monday, this Saturday, we will be releasing that guide for you guys. Team profiles on all 133 teams. We got profiles for, I believe, 48 quarterbacks, 60 running backs, 72 wide receivers, and 36 tight ends, and then rankings that go even deeper than that, and a lot of other great stuff involved in there. Awesome. Got all of that out of the way. K, Mr. Chris K, how are you doing today, sir? You've been waiting patiently over there to speak.
Yeah, this is usually where this is the skip portion of the pod when I typically listen. But I'm good. I got the auto draft set for our Nate Best Ball Dynasty startup that we're in, and I'm on deck, and I think I'm excited about who's available. There's two guys there. One of them, in just that's typical spirit of myself, will cause problems with one of the Campus to Canton guys if I can get him, but we'll see. He's second on my queue, so maybe the next time around I'll cause problems. But I'm good. How are you? How are you feeling with the draft?
So first of all, I'm doing great just as a person, but then in terms of this draft, I am normally like in redraft. I love the middle. I love sitting in the middle. I hate waiting super long to get my next pick and everything, because I'm usually pretty good about playing the ADP game. I'm usually pretty good about being able to get that extra round of value out of a player. Typically, in Dynasty, we don't have ADP. We don't have any kind of knowledge about where players are going off, and so I can't play that nearly as much. So what I would rather do is have something close to the turn so I can double tap certain rooms and stuff like that. I can't do that because I'm at the 17th pick out of 24 in this draft. So no matter what, I have to wait a super long time either way before it comes back to me. So if I pick one person out of a room and I want to get the other, more than likely, this is a smart group of people, more than likely somebody else is going to snatch up the other guy. And it's driving me absolutely nuts because it's completely different than what I'm used to doing in strategy. I love getting I love getting everybody in a room. And currently that is just borderline impossible with how big this draft is and where I am in the draft.
Yeah, I will say too, what's tricky with this is it's people that we've drafted with in best ball, so we kind of know who they like, just generally speaking. But then there's people that are knowledgeable, but just we have never drafted with, or
Yeah.
if we have, it's very few. So it's like I don't know who these guys are. I don't know if this guy's a Georgia fan or a South Carolina fan or a Michigan, like, so you kind of you're almost to the point we're almost to the point right now where it's I call it like your personal rankings list, where it's just like guys that you care about. You could draft somebody in the 12th round and you probably could have got him in the 20th round, because like people's lists are, I think, are so different at this stage in the game. But it's a fun experiment. These are always fun to look back on in like 10 years too and think like, what the hell were we thinking with some of these guys?
Speaking of you getting your guy, you just picked up Colston Loveland. Good job there, man.
Nice. Yeah, I was hoping it would last. He would last. Yeah.
So now I'm on deck, so I'll have this kind of open up here, see if I can make a pick at some point. I'm letting you know right now, because you just picked and everything, I'm probably going to go quarterback with this next pick, because that's the one position. Like you were saying, like, oh, it's personal preference at this point. I'm still kind of feeling the squeeze at quarterback in terms of like, I don't really like who I have in the room right now, because all I have is Shavon Cordero and Bert Emanuel, which tells you what my quarterback situation is looking like right now. So there's a guy who I'm going to hope I can get here. But anyway, that y'all don't want to listen to us about our leagues and everything like that. But regardless, this is a pretty fun draft we're in right now. We got an awesome show for you guys. We're going to be talking about a bunch of players who have another year of eligibility after this year. And yeah, it's probably a little early to kind of be talking about this, but it's the off season. Why not just kind of take our shots and everything, kind of start thinking about the future? Like Chris and I said, we're in dynasty leagues right now. A lot of you are kind of testing out dynasty leagues. Maybe you got a supplemental draft coming up you're preparing for. So you got to think about a year ahead in the future with some of these guys. So we got 12 guys we're going to touch on here today. So that should be a ton of fun. And then the other part of this is that our friend Chris Connolly on Twitter just kind of out of nowhere asked us to discuss the possibility of an all nerd conference in college football and what that would look like. And then I kind of added onto it. I'm like, what would that mean for CFF? Like, what would that look like for CFF? Would it be a good thing? Would it be a bad thing? I have no idea. But you know what, Kay? I already got the spiel out of the way, so let's go ahead and get right to it. Let's go talk about this nerd conference here that I have put together here. It is a conference of 10 teams. There were some pretty obvious guys to put in here, like, Vanderbilt, Northwestern, Georgia Tech, Rice, Berkeley, Stanford. Like, those guys all felt pretty obvious. And then we had to kind of get creative to kind of fill in the holes there. So I literally just went on Google and typed in nerd college and see what popped up. And surprisingly, schools like Duke, I guess I shouldn't be super surprised that Duke's out there, but like Duke popped up, Washington popped up. I was kind of surprised by that. And then San Diego State apparently is considered a nerd college. And then you told me that Virginia is a nerd college. Is that just something like you went to Virginia Tech, right? So like, is that just something from your time there?
Virginia is like the preppy, like super smart school, whereas like Virginia Tech's I think the stereotype would be like backwoods Virginia, camo wearing type, so it's a little bit more. It's a good school. Virginia Tech's still a good school, but it's just not to the level of UVA. So and it's not even a diss. I mean, it's a good thing to be a great school academically.
Of course, yeah, I know.
So there's nothing wrong with it. But yeah, they definitely fit the mold. I found it interesting. I guess two things when I look at this is, it didn't Froton's from San Diego or lives in San Diego.
Yes.
Did he go to San Diego State? Because that might just wipe away the fact that it is a nerd school.
I don't think so. I can't remember. No, he went to UMass, right?
I think he's from the Northeast. So
he went to UMass.
San Diego State's fine to be here still. A lot of ACC schools.
Yeah.
3 ACC schools are here. So yeah, I was surprised by Washington as well, but it's a pretty fun list. This is pretty interesting. The NAC.
The Nerd Alliance Conference. The NAC. I love it. NACtion going on over here. But how much NACtion would we really get out of this conference, Kay? Because like, it's fun to think about this just from a CFB level. I know a lot of people are like, oh, get all these terrible nerd teams out of the Power 5, out of the G5, and just have them go have their own conference so we don't have to have them as cupcakes in the conferences. But how would they fare against each other here, Kay? Like, in terms of like offenses and defenses here, Like, who would you think would stand out? Like, obviously, I think Washington would be unstoppable probably year one, but I don't know how much they could keep that up with Penix, Odunze, McMillan, and all those guys probably leaving after this year. And shoot, Kalen DeBoer probably leaves after this year, if I'm being honest as well. So, like, who do you think would be like the powerhouse in this conference?
I think Washington, obviously. I think Duke would be up there, and then I think San Diego State would be up there. They would be like the uninteresting but very solid good team because they've always been successful in the Mountain West. But Mountain West has had some pretty good teams in them consistently. So I think San Diego State would run this. At least the East side, they would just tear through.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, for those of you who aren't watching on YouTube, again, I did divide this up into two divisions. One is the West side that has Washington, Stanford, Cal, Rice, and San Diego State. And then the East side has Northwestern, Vandy, Georgia Tech, Duke, and Virginia. Geographically correct because, of course, the Nerd Conference would have that right. I honestly think that if Virginia made the right hire, aka not Tony Elliott, I feel like they would actually fare pretty well here. And then I think that, again, this is going to sound super crazy, but I think if Vanderbilt, given like the standard that they've had to raise themselves to even be remotely competitive in the SEC, I think that they might have themselves set up to have one of the better programs, at least in this conference, which again sounds nuts. But again, this is what happens when you put all of these terrible teams into one conference. So, okay, on a CFF perspective here, if this actually happened, would there be any players that you would actually be more interested in compared to where they are now?
Well, we talked about it yesterday on Twitter. I think Vanderbilt, like you kind of mentioned, would be more appealing because the conference shift is completely like a complete 180. Stanford probably benefits with a new system, but they would probably need a year before they would get rolling. I'm just trying to think, like, I am a big proponent of, like, if you're going to be successful offensively, just generally speaking, you have a quarterback, and this is a pretty weak quarterback group. I would think, again, Duke is going to be, Riley Leonard, imagine if ACC has some pretty weak defenses already, but like, imagine if he was going up against, the Georgia Techs, the Stanfords, the Rices of the world for 8-9 games this season. Riley Leonard would go crazy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think Cam Porter would be one who'd get a benefit here. Because again, Northwestern, the big thing we have with them is like, oh, they're in the Big Ten. They're not going to score very much. The games are too slow paced. They're not a very good offense. But again, throw them in this conference. I could see them probably getting an extra touchdown per game, and that would benefit Cam Porter a lot. The game script wouldn't go away from him as quickly. Anybody else that kind of sticks out to me here? Rice with JT Daniels, and then Luke McCaffrey and Bradley Rosner might have been interesting in this kind of conference. But
yeah, those are some underrated guys. I don't think Daniels is anything impressive, but like considering the schedule that they would likely have with the two receivers, that feels like that could work for a year for sure.
Alrighty, that's a fun little topic right there. Again, it is the off season. I enjoy little questions like that, and I thought it was a fun enough one that we could just spend like 5 minutes on it here. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of today's show here, Chris. We are going to talk about players and kind of predicting a year ahead of time here what we think is going to happen to them after this year. We're mostly talking about guys that have 2 to 3 years of eligibility left, and mostly 2 years of eligibility left, including this year, and then one guy with 3 years of eligibility, which we'll get to at the very end because Kay basically begged me to let him stay on the show. But we got about, 4 quarterbacks here, I think 5 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and then a tight end we will get through here. We're going to basically plant our foot down here before the start of the season and kind of give you guys our predictions of what happens to them after this year. So a lot of guys you're probably holding on to your dynasty or keeper rosters, and you're trying to figure out like, oh God, there's so many different ways they could go after this year. We're going to tell you what our predictions are. And we'll start here at the quarterback position with a guy that we really were just talking about, and that is Riley Leonard, quarterback out of Duke. He was our QB9 overall last season. Dude was consistent as hell last season. Among the top 12 QBs, he was second in terms of fantasy points efficiency. Basically, like there wasn't like a huge range to where he finished every week. He was very consistent week in and week out. Currently being drafted as a QB 11 this season, but man, he's got another year of eligibility after this year, and I think there's a lot of different ways you could take where he could go. So, Kay, your thoughts on what could happen to him?
So this is a tough one. I think people give him a lot of like NFL potential, which I personally don't see it. But if Daniel Jones from Duke can be drafted high, I could see it with Leonard. I'm going to go with stay because he doesn't seem like the type to leave. He maybe fits the mold of like Grayson McCall or Drake May, where it's like they could have gone to a different situation that's probably better for NIL or maybe just more prominent field to play against and play with. So I would say stay because I just don't think declare-wise. I mean, you got any of these quarterbacks you have to compare to the top dogs of Drake May and Caleb Williams, and then there's a bunch of other quarterbacks in this class, and how would he fare against them? So I don't think he would fare pretty well comparatively to those other quarterbacks. So I'm going to go with stay. I think he could be a super sneaky guy to stay for sure for a second year.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you for the most part in the fact that like I don't think that he is somebody that I think right now the people that are kind of touting him as a future NFL quarterback aren't really looking at what he did and are doing more along the lines of like, oh, I want to try to get on a guy before anybody else did. So I'm with you. And our Devy team definitely is not on board with him either. Again, our Devy guide this year, they had him as a tier 5 quarterback. So clearly they're not expecting him to be a guy that goes early in next year's draft or anything like that. In fact, I think I might have a quote here from that guide. Yeah, this comes from Colin Decker, one of our members over there, or one of the founders of C2C and everything. And he basically said that Riley struggles with consistency, feeling the rush and moving through his progressions. And then you combine that with his average arm strength, and that'll probably keep him from being drafted any earlier than day 3. So our Devy team is really not on board with him whatsoever for the most part. I will disagree with you, though. I think the more fun opportunity here is for him to transfer, and he is from Alabama. So a lot of people are like, oh, if Alabama doesn't have their situation figured out at quarterback and Leonard shows another year of consistent quarterback play over there at Duke, maybe he's a guy that they can go after. I don't think Bama is the team that goes after him. I think you could see Riley Leonard join Hugh Freeze at Auburn, and that would be an absolute miracle for CFF purposes. What do you think, Kay? You're an Auburn guy.
I love that. The reason why I'm smirking is because I thought in my head, I'm like, oh, he's going to say Alabama. But I think since you brought it up, the state of Alabama, it makes a lot of sense with Auburn. It's a little less crowded over QB room, and Thorne and Ashford to me are just like so far from being what Freeze needs that it wouldn't be unimaginable at all for him to go there.
Yeah, I think he could transfer to Auburn. I think that would be an absolute blast for anybody in CFF. And if you're holding on to him in CFF, like as you see him enter the portal, and you're like, oh God, he could end up in such a worse situation. If he went to Auburn with Hugh Freeze, that would just be. If you went to Auburn with Hugh Freeze, okay, and it was like next year's draft. Obviously, we don't know who comes back and who doesn't, and everything, but like. That feels like a guy you would take early on in drafts, right? Like even though like you try to take like known quantities early on in drafts, like the upside there would be just too much to ignore, right?
Yeah, I mean, if he has another good season, obviously he like initial thought to me is like top 6 quarterback without knowing obviously who comes back and who leaves and stuff like that. But like I'd be hard pressed. All the studs are old, right? Williams and Bo Nix, Frank Harris, Drake May. These are all guys that won't be back. So for sure they won't be back. So I think top 6 feels pretty safe. I mean, especially if you were to go to Hugh Freeze. I almost, if I was a Leonard owner, I would hope that he just stays because he could make the stupid decision. Like, yeah, the Hugh Freeze puts him in another stratosphere, but like if he stays at Duke, he's still going to be an awesome CFF asset.
That's true, but
where would you put him?
Where would I put him? I definitely try to go for like known quantities at quarterback. So, like, I would probably have him in the back half of my top 10 and hope that it's just a year where quarterbacks kind of fall into that kind of fourth, fifth round range rather than like a bunch of them being taken in the first round like we see this year. So, but at the same time, like, I wouldn't blame anybody who would take him in like the second round just on pure projection alone. So, alrighty, let's move on to our next quarterback here. Going from a guy who has dual threat ability to a guy with almost no dual threat ability, but has a pretty awesome arm and passing ability here. Let's go talk about Will Rogers. Kay, are you still on Will Rogers for this year? I know you're kind of touted at the beginning of the season. Have you kind of cooled off on that a bit?
Yeah, I'm definitely cooled off. I think he's like a decent quarterback, just generally speaking, but with everything that's changed with the passing of Leach and the new offense, like the QB class is just so deep. The 2023 group of CFF QBs is so deep that like the more I thought about it, I think originally I was thinking in the 20s, but the more you look at how deep the class is, it's like, I mean, he's probably in the 40s at best, right? I mean, for me, that's like Cameron Ward. Yeah, Cameron Ward and Tanner Mordecai. And I think those guys have more upside than Will Rogers. So I'm unfortunately cooled on him. I think he'd be a fun guy to see be successful, but I'm just not seeing it from a CFF standpoint.
Yeah, I think he could go definitely one of several ways for this year. Again, like, I think it's possible for him to have like a Chase Bryce kind of season. Again, we would definitely have to see him use his legs a little bit more than we have in the past for that to happen. But Chase Bryce was like what, QB like 40 something last year, I think, like that. Like I just saw his name. Yeah, QB 37. So like, putting him right there in that QB 40 range, I don't entirely blame you for. And again, I do think Rodgers is a good college quarterback. Now, again, our Devy team and myself as well, like, I don't think he's an NFL quarterback for the future or anything. Like, at best, he's a guy that could be a decent backup in the NFL. But I think there's a couple ways this could go. If he's successful in a traditional offense with like Kevin Barbay and everything like that, I do think there's a decent chance we see him declare after this year. Now, if he were to fail in this new offense, maybe it's just not his style. He realizes like, nah, I just work well in air raid systems. He could transfer. And there's a lot of really fun places that he could end up next year, because there's tons of air raid systems that are going to need a quarterback next year. Washington State, Western Kentucky, Georgia Southern, all of those guys have pretty much 1 or 2 years of eligibility left, and I think Ward probably has his sights set on the NFL next year. So I think he can end up at any one of those three places, and that would be absolutely incredible for us. But I am going to put my little token here. I forgot to use our tokens last time. I'm going to put it in stay, because everything about Will Rogers, based on his recruiting history and everything, has just said, regardless of who's at Mississippi State, I want to be at Mississippi State. He is just a dude that grew up loving this school, and regardless of who is there, he's going to want to perform for them. So I think that if Rodgers doesn't declare next year, he is definitely going to stay more likely than anything else. Okay, your thoughts on Rodgers and what could happen to him next year?
Yeah, it's going to be a super boring response, but I'm going to go stay as well. He's been loyal to them the whole time. Yep. I can't imagine they can't push out Will Rogers, right? Like, no. It's not like they're going to be like, well, we need to move you. You got to get out of here. You're not going to see that happen. But you raise a good point. Like, if he doesn't play well, does he say, screw it, I need to go back to a system I'm like more similarly aligned with in my career? Because like there's two trains of thought, right? Like, does he need to prove himself in a more traditional offense to go to the NFL? Or
I would say so.
I would say so. I would agree as well, right? So I think I think he's going to be just average, and thus will stay another year. Because I don't see him being like a top 6 or 8 quarterback in this class. I think it would be dumb for him to move to another air raid type system. But you made a good point. I'd never even thought about it like that. That it could happen, but I would lean stay for sure.
Yeah, I'm definitely saying stay. But like if he transfers, I think the reason why he would transfer would be, I need to just go back to what I'm comfortable with. I'm not going to make it to the NFL, so maybe I can go somewhere that I fit really well in, and maybe they'll give me some pretty decent NIL deal. Because if he goes to a place like Western Kentucky and everything, or like Georgia Southern, or even Washington State, like he is a name that can bring in some money. I would say it would generate some excitement for whatever school that he lands at, and he could probably make a decent buck with NIL. So I think that could be the way that he goes with it. But I'm glad that we are in agreement. Let's move on to our third quarterback here. We're going to move over into the Pac-12 and talk about Mr. Jayden Williams, quarterback out of Arizona. I'm going to keep this pretty short. He's already transferred once. I don't think he is set to graduate. So I would say that transfer is pretty much off the table here because I don't think he wants to sit another year. He has the starting job of Arizona pretty much locked up right now. I don't think Noah Fafita or any of the other guys are really pushing that much from behind him. And he performed pretty well. I haven't heard a lick of NFL talk with him whatsoever. Like I even tried to look up Jayden Williams NFL draft and everything, and there just really wasn't that much out there. Our Devi team has him as a tier 7, and Mike Valerie, who wrote his profile in there, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he said basically this guy might make a practice squad in the NFL. He is exactly where he needs to be to provide any kind of fantasy production whatsoever. So I am emphatically in the stay column here. So
yeah, this will be.
Do you have any?
Yeah, I was gonna say I promise we'll get more. This will get more exciting because we're gonna align again. Stay. I think you can immediately rule out NFL. He's small. He's turnover prone.
Exactly.
He again doesn't compare to those other guys by any means. He doesn't do anything spectacular for a 6-foot quarterback. So he needs more seasoning for sure. And I think he'll probably graduate. I mean, this will be his 4th year, so it's conceivable that he could graduate, but he's a West Coast guy, right? Like, isn't he from Hawaii? Like, where else would he go? It's not like there's a guy coming up, I believe, that I think makes more sense to go back home. And that's why there's a transfer thought in my head, but he seems like the best fit for Arizona. The only other thought would be, does he think that he has no true NFL potential? So does he try to find the money, right? Does he try to, I don't know Arizona's NIL situation. I can't imagine it's insane, but maybe he goes somewhere that will pay him because he realizes that he's not going to make a ton of money, if much at all, in the NFL. So that would be the only reason why I would think he would transfer if he does, if he is able to after the year.
I just don't see that really happening because, like you said, he's turnover prone. He's really just objectively, he's not a good quarterback, but he is what kind of Arizona needs right now. It's definitely their best option right now. I don't think the NIL is going to keep him at Arizona because it definitely didn't keep Dorian Singer there. But then again, they were going up against USC, so that's always going to be hard for you to fight the NIL money on that. But yeah, no, I'm emphatically in the stay column here. If you have Jayden Williams, I would anticipate him sticking around for 2 years. And hopefully that offense just continues to be awesome like it has been the last 2 years because they are basically, again, Delores' value does not come from any inherent talent that he has. It is mostly because Arizona's defense is awful and he's actually decently okay at throwing the ball, so therefore he is going to score a lot of touchdowns. So
and he does a decent job of using his legs. He's not he's not a zero, right? Like he's not a Kyle McCord or a CJ Stroud where you have to really get high passing volume or just super efficient numbers. So the turnover stuff's cool with us. I don't really care. A pick 6 is actually not bad sometimes. So because you get behind in the game and then you get to push it more, but he's not a non-zero as a runner, which is nice. Yeah. And he ran 74 times compared to 45 at Washington State. Do we see maybe an increase again? Maybe there's some upside there that for CFF standpoint that we could find as well.
We will definitely see, but as of now, we definitely both agree that he'll be sticking around for another year after this year. Let's go talk about a MAC guy. Let's go talk about Daquan Finn. This is a dude that I know you've been high on him. I'm getting more and more high on him as well because I think I have a pretty high ownership of him in a lot of the best balls I've been doing. Because I don't think people realize that when he played full games last year, he averaged 29.2 fantasy points per game. He was just having an absolutely insane year. It's just that he got hurt. which really, really sucks. So the question remains, like, what's he going to do after this year? Because is he like the ultimate dynasty ad? Because I know, Kay, you were thinking about adding him in like the first round of the dynasty league that we were looking at over here. Where did he end up going? It was pretty early. Yeah, he went in the second round, the 2-9 in a dynasty pick. Because I think a lot of people, including myself, think he's going to stay around in college as long as he can. There's no NFL future here for Daquan Finn. Really, there's not typically a lot of NFL future for most guys in the MAC, maybe outside of wide receiver. So I basically assume all MAC players are lifers for the most part. But here's where, even though I'm saying all that, I think he transfers after this year because of one major thing. And that is Jason Candle was already kind of being looked at by a couple of schools as a potential ad as offensive coordinator. If Jason Candle leaves Toledo and they don't really have anything put in place to kind of keep what they have going, I don't think Finn's going to want to stick around for that. I think he kind of goes the Marquez Cooper. Oh my God, brain fart.
Marquez Cooper, yeah.
Marquez Cooper.
The Ball State, yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I think he goes that route. For some reason in my head, I was thinking like Cooper's not his last name. No, it 100% is. He goes the Marquez Cooper route. He's going to transfer out and he's going to look at wherever Jason Candle lands. If where Jason Candle landed, there's not really a bunch of competition for him because he's a pretty good sized quarterback. He's over 6 foot, 210 pounds. Like it's not like he's Marquez Cooper where he's like small and like he would get absolutely destroyed at a Power 5 level. So if he looks there and says like, okay, if there is like room for me to be there, maybe get the starting role, I can see him transferring to wherever Jason Candle goes. Or if he looks at it and says like, oh no, they clearly have their starter, he just transfers somewhere else in the MAC and just kind of goes off from there, like maybe Bowling Green or something like that. That's kind of my thought process on this. I think he's going to transfer after this year one way or another because Jason Candle will not be at Toledo after this year.
So a little disclaimer. I literally said to Jared, here are 8 guys I think would be interesting to talk about. And I literally said nothing about what I thought would happen with them. So I say that because I agree transfer, but for different reasons. I think I'm higher on Finn than you are. Obviously, I don't think he's like a complete zero chance to do anything in the NFL. Like he has a little bit of size. He's super mobile. He is electric. He probably needs to be a little bit more refined, but I think from a skill set standpoint, like there's a world where he could be in the NFL. You never know. I don't think he's like an automatic no, but with that being said, I think he transfers because I could see a world where Toledo screws around and plays Tucker Gleason a decent bit. Gleason really was pretty good when he filled in. Like I think he had a couple of 300-yard games, a couple of passing TD games. He had a 100-yard rushing game. I could see a world where Toledo screws around, uses him just enough to piss off Finn, and then Finn says, I'm going to go get some money. I mean, he looked good against Ohio State.
Yeah.
Had a pretty decent to good fantasy point game in that one. I could see him 100% going to another, like a Power 5 school that, needs a quarterback. I don't know where that would be. He's from Michigan. I can't imagine. I mean, like, would Michigan State take Daquan Finn like in a heartbeat, right?
Yeah,
I'd
probably say so.
I don't know if they'd want to go old at quarterback, considering their roster probably needs a little bit more help than just one guy. But I think he finds the money a little bit. I think there's 2 things for him. He tries to get some money, and he also wants to play against better competition to help kind of catapult himself maybe onto draft boards. So different reasons, but we both agree that transfer is a really strong likelihood here.
So if those are the reasons, Kay, may I ask, why do you think he didn't transfer this year then?
It's a really good question. Maybe he doesn't, maybe he tried to like back channel test waters, see if people were talking about him, had any interest in him, right? Like there are definitely back channels of conversations.
Of course.
But that would be a good counterpoint to that idea because I think there's a little bit of level of like Gleason has to play a little bit for him to kind of get pushed into that route, but Who knows? I mean, I would love if I was a lot of different Power Five schools. I would love Finn as my quarterback. I'm a very pro Finn guy though.
Yeah, I question whenever I see somebody from the MAC trying to translate up to the Power Five, especially like that. So like I'm a little hesitant on that idea, but like it's not impossible at all. I will say, while you're talking about Gleason there and everything, I have started in best balls for those of you who are listening. When I do draft Daquan Finn, I have actually started in like the last round of all those drafts, just drafting Gleason at the very end as well, because Finn has insane upside, but so does Gleason whenever he plays. And so if you just want to lock down that Toledo offense for pretty much the entire year, I think that's a fine little handcuff right there. You seem a little hesitant there, Kay.
No. I'm not a huge handcuff type of guy. I can see the appeal to it. And I mean, he's literally free. Like, I don't know if he's been, I don't think I've seen him be drafted. So I don't hate the idea. As long as you're doing it in like the last round.
Yeah, no,
second to last round if you're with Jared.
I would say pretty much the only reason why like I was like looking at him is because the draft I was in, they did a really good job. There wasn't really much value falling towards the end of the draft, so I was just like, you know what, like I don't love anybody here. Let me just lock up one of these like quarterback rooms here just to kind of give me a little bit of extra bonus there, and I felt pretty good about it. So I figured I would share that with you guys. Let's stop talking about quarterbacks here, though. Let's go talk about some running backs here. And we'll start with Will Shipley, running back out of Clemson. This is somebody who gets talked about a lot in the Devy spaces because he's a pretty, I would say, I don't want to say controversial, but there's a lot of split opinions on like how Will Shipley is going to translate to the NFL. There's a lot of people who are kind of all in on him. There's people who are completely out on him. How does that impact him here, though, for us at the CFF level? I'm going to go ahead and let you guys know. I think he declares after this year for just kind of standard reasons for running backs. Running backs currently are being heavily pushed by scouts, by people who are kind of advising these guys to get your 3 years in at college, and whether you're ready or not, declare for the NFL. Because if you can show out at some of the pro days, you can show out at the combine and everything like that, you're going to get drafted, and that's probably the best you're going to do. It's better for you to come out a little early in year 3 and have them draft you on projection than for you to stay for an extra 4th year, get more tread on your tires, and then draft you based on your production, which might end up hurting you actually because of that tread on your tires. You got Will Shipley here, a former 5-star running back in, according to 247 here. I know that there's a lot of people out there who don't think he's going to translate, but again, he has that receiving ability, so some NFL team is going to want him on their roster, and then he can kind of maybe build himself up from there. Like, he's not a Travis Etienne. He's not going to go in the first round. I think everybody kind of agrees with that. But I could see him being a day 2, early day 3 guy here. And so I think that just with all that put together, I think he's going to declare after the season, unless something just absolutely catastrophic happens, like he gets injured or he performs so well that Phil Maffa takes over and he's like the 2 or 3 running back for Clemson, then he might transfer and try again somewhere else. But for now, I think I'm just going to go ahead and say he declares after the season. I don't really see much reason for him to stick around. What do you think, Kay?
Yeah, I'm gonna say stay or declare. The problem is, right, like there's no choice, there's no location for him to go that would be better than Clemson.
Yeah.
In theory. He'd have to perform awful for him to stay or to transfer. And I just don't see that happening. I think like I said this on Burning the Red Shirt maybe like a month ago, with Mox actually. And I think he just gets a bad rap because like he's just been around and talked about forever, and he's put up a lot of very good games, but he's not like your 204 touchdown type guy. Like he's just a little bit more, I feel like he's a little bit more well-rounded than he is maybe super dynamic in one way or the other. So he kind of feels boring at this point. So I think that's where he gets some of the hate. But, it wouldn't shock me for Dabo to pony up some money. Blake Corum came back, but he had that knee injury. Yes. I think Corum could have come back, and I would have, I always thought he was going to come back because of the knee injury impacting it. But I do think that Corum came back in part because of like beating Ohio State, but not winning even one playoff game, and kind of getting that vengeance and finishing on a high note, and also being a part of it. So, I mean, I could see Shipley potentially do that, but the odds are very, very low. Declare is 100% my option. 5%, it would be 95 and 5%, I think, for him to declare versus stay.
Okay, have we agreed on every single one so far?
I think so. I'm gonna have to just whatever you do or whatever I'm just gonna
play some devil's advocate.
Disagree, yeah.
But in terms of some of the other bad rap that Shipley gets and everything, I did actually do a little bit of research because I remember a lot of people talking about him. So I was like, okay, what exactly were they saying? I know that Noah Hills, who did the Awesome Hero RB show, I really wish he would bring that back this year. Maybe it is back and I just can't find it. But he dove into a lot of the analytics behind Shipley and basically said that like he was just way less efficient compared to even other guys on the team who are just statistically worse as running backs than he is in terms of their talent level and everything like that. So he's really disappointed on that front. And then the other part of it is that I think Austin put it best in his profile on the Devy Guide, where he basically said that Shipley is like super uber athletic, but he doesn't know how to use that athleticism as a running back. So like you constantly see him make mistakes when you watch his film. You constantly see him cut where he should have just kept going. Can't really read where to go when he's running the ball. So I think that's kind of the rap that he's kind of getting right now. I hope I paraphrased that well enough for our Devy guys over there. I'm sure I'll hear it in the Slack later on. All right, let's go ahead and move on to another running back here. And let's go talk about Kavorian Barnes, G5 guy here, running back out of UTSA. Okay, I'm going to let you go first because I think I've gone first the last couple of times.
Well, I was going to just figure out a way to articulate a disagreement, so maybe you'll have to do it.
All right, fine.
I am going to say, no, I'll go first.
Okay,
Let's try this one. Let's try one more time. So this is one that Jared chose, and I didn't think too much into it. Stay. For me, it's like, he's an old, what is he, a second year? He's like a redshirt freshman, or actually,
this would be his third year.
So like possibility to declare maybe because of what you talked about with Shipley and running backs, just needing to kind of get that NFL clock started. But I mean, he has years to play with, right? And UTSA is building a really good program. He's going to have a big year. Maybe he tries to run it back twice. I would lean for sure stay.
I'm going to go transfer here. Finally, we disagree, Kay. I'm going to go transfer here because I think there's a variety of things that can cause him to leave here. One, there's no way Jeff oh my goodness, I can't speak today. Jeff Taylor stays at UTSA forever, right? Like they keep hiring away his offensive coordinators, but somebody's going to hire him as a head coach eventually, unless he just loves UTSA. So I think there's a decent chance that he could leave after the season. Maybe Barnes follows him there. Barnes is another guy that, again, his efficiency is incredible. And I do think that he has the size to move up to the Power 5 if he wanted to. And there's actually two possible destinations here that I think could be a ton of fun for CFF moving forward. One definitely more fun than the other, I would say. But he's had two offensive coordinators at UTSA the last 2 years that have both moved on to Power 5 jobs. One of which is Will Stein, who just headed to Oregon. So Barnes at Oregon, I think, could be pretty fun. And then you also have Barney, who went over to Illinois. So let's take Kavorian Barnes and put him over there at Illinois. I think that could be a ton of fun right there. And again, puts him on the eyeballs of NFL scouts a little bit more in the P5 there. I think it makes a lot of sense for him to move up to a Power 5 position if after this year he feels the need to.
I don't know where he's from. I'm imagining if he went to UTSA, he's probably from like the Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas area. So like an Oklahoma State could be super fun. Like RB1s there have been good for everybody. Oklahoma doesn't make sense. Texas doesn't make sense.
No.
Does he go, Illinois would be great for CFF, but I just don't know. Is his only connection there just you said they took one of his coaches?
Yeah, the offensive coordinator from 2 years ago is over there.
Yeah, I wonder, did he get recruited by him, and is there a tight connection? Because that could make sense.
I can look up to see what his head recruiter is to see if see if 247 will give me that information.
The thing that I've learned from interacting and kind of seeing UTSA people on Twitter and stuff like that is like it is like a super passionate group that is very passionate about their program and it having success. I mean, I could see players stay there and just the whole time and then go pro just because there is that loyalty to the program. And, you know, Jeff Taylor, you said, well, is he ever going to get hired? I think he deserves to be hired.
He does.
But I see a world where UTSA is one of the better or best, you know, up there in the echelon of G5 programs in the next like 5-10 years. So maybe Barnes feels the loyalty to stay. And I mean, if they're going to feed him the rock and he's going to be successful, it's hard to say no to that if they can pony up a little bit of money.
That's true. And I guess it just depends on whether he does have NFL aspirations or not. So we can definitely see there. And I did look it up. It was a running backs coach, Julian Griffin, who recruited him, and he is still at UTSA. So with all the coaching turnover, his primary recruiter is still at UTSA. So if he moves on, then I would definitely kind of watch to see where he goes, because that has been a constant for Barnes since he's gotten there. So we can see what goes on there. All right, let's move our little tokens back here. Let's go ahead and talk about another running back here. Let's go back up to the Power 5. Let's go talk about a guy that I don't think really a lot of us know what to do with this year because of just how muddied this running back room is, and that is Jonathan Brooks, running back out of Texas. Man, this all depends on really how this running back room kind of shakes out here, right? Like, I don't think there's a world where he stays after this year. He's a veteran in the program. If he is the lead running back for Texas this year and he hits that 1,000-yard mark and everything like that, you would think he's just sitting there like, okay, that's it. Once again, running backs kind of being pushed to the NFL, being like, hey, I got a really good season in. The NFL knows my name. I'm going to go try to take my shot here, especially when I got two talented guys behind me in Jayden Blue and CJ Baxter coming in this year. But if he isn't, like, say this spring injury here really does kind of knock him down the totem pole a little bit for running backs and everything, and he sees talented guys like Jayden Blue and CJ Baxter get there ahead of him, he has to transfer at that point, you would think. There's no way he would try to declare for the NFL as the RB3 on Texas. So I don't really know which way to lean here. I think more than likely he is probably not. I'm believing in either Jayden Blue or CJ Baxter to kind of overtake him at some point. I just don't really know who or how likely that is. But I think I'm going to go with the most likely option in my opinion, and that is transfer. And I will acknowledge that pretty much it's a toss-up between transfer or declare based on what happens in that running back room. But I think he transfers, and I'll be real, I don't have a good landing spot for him because he was like Texas loyal the whole time that he was at like being recruited. So I have no clue. Okay, your thoughts?
I do not think transfer, but to kind of finish the transfer thought, if he transfers, it very likely means he became second fiddle at best at Texas. Yeah. Probably maybe just splits carries with Blue, or because Keelan Robinson's also there. So like maybe there's a mix there behind Baxter. So if he transfers, it's with very limited usage and production, even though like his limited stuff is pretty good. So what about like a North Texas, like a G5, maybe an AEC program that could be fun?
All indications are that he's good enough to be like a Power 5 back. That's the thing that like if it was just G5, he has a couple of G5 offers from teams that were just kind of shooting their shot on him. Again, he was very Texas loyal. The only other P5 offer, at least 247 listed, was Texas Tech. And I don't think he would really want to go to Texas Tech if he's looking for usage.
It's hard to go Texas to anybody. I mean, the city of Austin's awesome. The program is, has so many perks to it, and it's such a big program and it's the spotlight. So to go to like a Texas Tech, which is in like the middle of nowhere, right? Like Lubbock, that would have to be a culture shock. My answer would be declare, right?
Okay.
I think he'll play enough, especially with the true freshman Baxter likely being, I think, end of season RB1. But I think there'll be enough usage for him to kind of show his talents. Not a lot. There's still tons of tread on the tire. He hasn't really been used or overused. He's over that 200 number that everybody likes in the C2C community. He's shown the ability to catch passes, I think. So you mix some decent speed with some young legs and enough production. I think wouldn't shock me at all for him to just jump right for a 6th or 7th round draft pick type spot.
And for what it is worth, our Devy team, at least Mike Valerie, who wrote up his profile for our Devy guide, does actually think that Brooks is in line to at least be a day 3 pick and probably be a part of a committee in the future for the NFL. That's kind of how he projects him out there. So if that's all Brooks really wants, is just to get into the NFL and try to be a piece for an offense, then yeah, very likely he could declare, even if he isn't the clear number 1 guy for Texas this year. I can acknowledge that. Let's go ahead and get another running back here. Now let's go back out west and talk about Mr. Bucky Irving, running back out of Oregon. Again, we've talked about on the ranking summits several months ago that I'm not a huge fan of Bucky Irving this year because of the way that staff's been talking about Noah Whittington, but he does have a decision to make after this year. And once again, I'm kind of going back towards him going to declare after the season. I think he probably wanted to declare after last season because he had a really good season with the Ducks, had really good production on, quite frankly, limited amount of carries, which is always a good thing you want to see. He doesn't really have NFL size, so maybe he wants to fix that up a little bit. But I think he was kind of convinced to come back so that Oregon can make a run for the Pac-12 this year, kind of the same reason why Bo Nix was coming back as well. I think they are one of those programs kind of like Michigan this year, where they convinced a lot of people to come back in order to kind of have that one last hurrah. So, but I think if they don't get it done this year, Irving's gone after this year. If he does want to have a future in the NFL, he has to save some of that tread, especially with the smaller size that he has. He could make a pretty decent, change of pace back, catching the ball out of the backfield and everything like that. But again, I think all signs are kind of pointing for him to declare after the season. So that's where I'm going to go with it. Kay, your thoughts here, man?
So I think he was a true sophomore last year. So
no way.
So I don't know if he. It depends on what he did at Minnesota. I just did a quick look, and it makes it seem like he was a true freshman at Minnesota. But anyways, I'm going to say stay. I think there are good reasons for him to declare, right? What else is he going to have to prove? Bo Nix will be gone. That offense will be different. You see guys on maybe that 50-50 area tend to leave if other studs on the offense leave, right? Because it's well, do I want to have a potential, be a part of a potential bad offense and then I look worse, or just we aren't as successful as a team? But I mean, Oregon's a pretty sweet school to play at. They can pay, I think, he's a little bit of a smaller guy, like we all know. So maybe he just eats it up a little bit and stays an extra year for the money.
So I gotta
plays some big football. And
I got to put my hand up here because I got an egg on my face big time here. So yes, he is a true sophomore last year. I thought he'd been around much longer than that. I don't know why.
It feels like we've talked about him for years. And I think it's just because he was pretty relevant as his true freshman year. He wasn't anything crazy, but he ended up having a pretty decent year. And, he played at Minnesota, which is always top of mind for running backs. So I think that was probably just a case where we've seen him play enough and talked about him enough where it feels like he's been around forever.
He's also bigger than I thought. Again, ESPN has him listed at 5'10", 194. So again, obviously you want to hit that 200-pound threshold in order to be an NFL back and everything like that. But that's not too far off. If he puts on some weight this offseason and everything, kind of gets remeasured and everything like that, he's really not that far off. Again, I'm still sticking with Declare because again, it's his 3rd season. All the more reason for him to get out of there. Get out of there as soon as you can and everything like that. If he has another good year, 2 consistent years at Oregon, a big time program and everything, yeah, why not take the shot? Go Declare. You said stay, right?
I said stay, yeah.
Sorry. I was too busy realizing how wrong I was about this man. Alrighty. So yeah, anything else? Sorry.
No, I think this is a guy I wouldn't be afraid to target if I was trying to like push for a championship towards the end of the season, because I do think there's a really decent chance he stays. I think there's a world where there's a really decent reason for him to stay, and sure, it's possible, but if you're pushing for a championship, you get the production maybe for a month or 6 weeks, and then you could luck into him coming back, which would be awesome.
That would be pretty awesome. Alrighty, let's move on. Let's go to Marquez Cooper, the running back, now at Ball State, formerly at Kent State. I'm going to keep this one relatively short. I mentioned earlier that I think most of the guys in the MAC are MAC lifers. They'll continue playing as long as they can because they don't really have much of a future in the NFL. Again, outside of the wide receivers, they seem to do pretty well. But Marquez Cooper especially, again, he is a very, very small guy. Let me pull up his measurements here real quick. It is not pretty if you are a measurements kind of guy. Yes, he is 5'7", 190 pounds. So very, very short running back. There's a reason why he did not move up to the Power 5 level. He pretty much already had his chance if he wanted to. If he wanted to go to the NFL, he had his chance this year to go to a Power 5 system. He could have easily followed Sean Lewis over to Colorado, where really they did not have a lot of great options at running back. But instead, he decided to just stay in the MAC. He decided to say, like, hey, this is my level of competition. I'm going to stay here. I do not think that he will be moving to the NFL at any point in his life. So he's just going to run out of his eligibility, and he's going to stick around at Ball State because he's already transferred once. I don't think he's going to transfer again. So,
yeah, this one's a little bit of a boring one because he is so small. Maybe I thought of him, and the thought from me was like, let's put this front and center as a guy that if you are doing some sort of startup, he has some serious potential this year, and he's so small. There's pretty much no reason for him not to just stay. I don't know what would have to happen for him to go to the NFL.
I don't think there is a path. I don't think we even included it in our Devi guide.
Yeah, so this is a guy I would certainly consider and target if you're doing a startup. This is a little bit of a softball, but I think worth mentioning because we are doing a startup, and he was one of the guys definitely top of mind early in the draft because of that.
Did you end up getting him?
I did not. No, I went with Squirrel and Damian Martinez. So
oh yeah, shoot, he went 2-2. He went real early.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. Yeah, that was kind of a quick one. We'll continue moving it along here, and y'all, I asked this man Chris K to send me names that we could discuss, and he said, "Nah, screw that. We're gonna discuss an entire wide receiver room here." Because he desperately wants to talk about the USC wide receiver room here. So we got 4 names that we could really talk about here that are eligible for declaration after this year. You got Taj Washington, Brendan Rice, Mario Williams, and Dorian Singer amongst all of these guys. So I'll go quickly kind of through all of them in terms of like what my thought processes are and what happens after this year. Brendan Rice and Dorian Singer, it's like one or the other. Whoever ends up being that top outside option for actually no, Dorian Singer plays in the slot, doesn't he? Yeah, I think Brendan Rice is probably gone after this year. I think Singer is outside. I think the Rice and Singer are outside, and then Taj and Mario are in the slot. Is how gotcha.
That's how I perceive their receiver room. So I think your initial thought was correct.
Okay, cool. Anyway, regardless, like whoever's that top outside option for Caleb after this year is going to declare. I mean, Brendan Rice, he's Jerry Rice's kid. There's already some NFL bloodlines there. He's going to have connections. Somebody's going to want to take on that bloodline right there, especially if he performs well for USC this year. He's gone after this year if he does well. And then Dorian Singer, if he wants to come back that next year and then be the top outside guy the next year, if Brendan Rice is this year, I think he could come back. And then it could be the opposite. Maybe Brendan Rice stays another year if Dorian Singer pops off this year and Brendan Rice is like, all right, no, I will be the top guy next year. So I think one of those guys will stay. One of those guys will go off to the draft. I doubt both of them go off to the draft. Mario Williams, I think, declares. Apparently, there is still some faith among NFL guys for him, even though I pretty much have gone off of him for the most part. I don't think he's ever really been a clear top option for Caleb Williams. But again, people still like him, so I think he'll probably declare after this year. And then Taj Washington, I think he transfers again, because I think he is at the point where he can be a grad transfer once again. And I think he kind of realizes, like, you got Bucky Williams, Zachariah Branch, other guys coming in behind him. Lincoln Riley's probably going to pull like 2 wide receivers out of the portal every single year. I think he would want to just kind of move on, try to be that top dog somewhere else. That's kind of my thought process on all of these guys. So
you should have seen this coming, because the reason why I said all of them was because I have them all doing the same thing, which made it a very easy talking point. I think they all declare to go pro.
Okay.
Caleb Williams is gone. Sure, Malachi Nelson will be fun. Will be great. But like, they bring in Lemon and they bring in Branch. Branch conceivably, we've started to, you guys have really talked about him, and I'm jumping on board. You guys have done a good enough job of explaining how Branch could be effective and used in his freshman year. So there's 2 receivers right there, so and they're going to bring in more in the next class. They could bring in a transfer. I think if there's one guy that's likely to stay, it's Singer. Mm-hmm. But I think Rice, Washington, and Mario are all gone for sure. And I would add Singer to the group. The thing with Taj is he's super fast. So he doesn't necessarily have to have a huge season. He's been super consistent pretty much for 3 straight seasons, and we'll get probably the same amount, if not better, this 4th season.
Yeah, fair enough.
He's so quick and he's so fast. It makes up for that little bit of lack of size. And I think teams are starting to not necessarily care as much about like height and weight as much as it feels like they used to.
Oh, fair point.
They're a little bit more towards it. But he definitely will be the one with the least amount of hype. Like Mario will have hype, Rice will have hype because he's got some size in his name, and then Singer seems like a really decent prospect as well. So,
yeah, in terms of like what our Devy team thinks of all these guys, Washington was not even included in our Devy guys. So our Devy team does not think that Washington will be doing anything. That's part of the reason why I think he was kind of more transfer than anything else. But Rice they have as a tier 6, Williams they have as a tier 6, and Singer they have as a tier 5. So all of these guys they kind of put in that tier of like, probably none of them are going to reach that first round capability like Jordan Addison did this year. But in terms of just getting to the NFL, 3 of these guys our Devy team absolutely sees making it there. So if all three of those guys, Mario, Dorian, and Brendan, all 3 of them perform well this year, yeah, I agree with you. All 3 of them are gone. Washington, I am pretty convinced, is probably going to transfer after this year, unless Lincoln just desperately needs some leadership in that wide receiver room. Let's go with another wide receiver here. This one is, man, I wanted to be a goose on this one, K. I wanted to channel my inner K here and kind of go with a relative hot take. But when I dove a little bit deeper, it kind of felt obvious that he's going to declare after the season. I wanted to kind of go with the narrative of like, oh, Brian Kelly, he's building something up at LSU. Look at what they did in year 1. He convinced Garrett Nussmeier to stick around and let him build up that program. Malik Neighbors, he was doing so well whenever Garrett Nussmeier was out there. He'd rather go to the NFL after a season with Nussmeier than a season with Jayden Daniels. But here's the thing. LSU has a history of wide receivers declaring early. You have, honestly, there wasn't like, again, Garrett Nussmeier, obviously the better passing quarterback out of the 2, but as the year kind of finished, Jayden Daniels actually had a pretty decent connection with Malik Neighbors as the season was kind of finishing up there. So I don't think that's going to be as impactful in Neighbors' decision-making as we might have thought it was going to be. Again, my initial thought was like, oh yeah, Nussmeier's a better passer. He's going to want to play with Nussmeier. I'm like, but I don't think there's a huge difference, at least for Daniels, or at least for Neighbors moving forward. So I personally think that I'm still just going to, what's that old saying where it's like, if it seems obvious, it probably is obvious. I'm probably just going to stick with Declare. Our Devy team's high on Malik Neighbors. I know they have him as a tier 2 wide receiver in the Devy guide. Corey P, who wrote up his profile, says that he's probably a top 5 wide receiver in next year's draft. So if you're a top 5 wide receiver in next year's draft, a quarterback change from Jayden Daniels to Garrett Nussmeier and the possibility of winning a national championship, I don't know if that's going to be enough to really get you to come back for one more year, especially if you are getting that first round paycheck possibly. So, Kay, your thoughts here, man?
Yeah, we'll get back to agreeing. I think Declare makes the most obvious sense here. Big hype around him for the draft next year. He had that huge bowl game. He's going to have a nice year this year, obviously. There is the appeal, like you said, right, of Nussmeier. Because, with Nussmeier, he would have huge numbers. Like, I think we all agree, at least in the CFF group at C2C, that if Nussmeier was the quarterback, Neighbors would shoot up our personal rankings.
Yes.
From, I think I have him around like 15 or 18. I would put him at like 10, 11.
He'd be a top 10 wide receiver for me.
Yeah, maybe even top 10. But because Jayden Daniels is the guy, there's still going to be a lot of positive. They're going to score a ton. There's going to be a nice connection, but there's just a difference between the two and what that offense will look like. Ultimately, doesn't matter how much you're going to win the next year. Doesn't feel like receivers are the ones that stay, surprisingly, right? Like, it feels like quarterbacks are the surprise stays, maybe a running back or two surprise stay, but receiver just doesn't feel like the position that people shock you and you go, oh shoot, like, why did he go to the NFL? He was going to be a first round pick. But I don't see that happening with Neighbors. I think he goes, and it feels pretty spot on.
Now, receivers by nature are divas, and so if they can feel the hype building for them and everything, they're gonna take on that hype as quickly as they can. All right, one last guy here, Kay. This is the man that you begged me to have on here because pretty much immediately we have to take off one of our options here because this man literally cannot declare after this season because he is only a true sophomore. But you wanted to talk about RJ Maryland, tight end out of SMU. You seem to be very gung-ho about the possibility of him transferring somewhere. So, okay, I'm going to let you kind of talk me into this because I'll be real. You told me what it was, and I'm skeptical that this could happen. But let me hear it. I want you to convince me.
This is what we do at Burning the Red Shirt. We find something that has a little sliver of the door open, and you open it wide open, and then it creates panic and chaos. I think RJ Maryland is RJ. He's short for Russell Maryland, the former stud defensive lineman at Miami. Okay. He's a Hall of Famer at the Miami Hurricanes in the College Football Hall of Fame. It's a great place to go for tight ends. They don't really they have a bunch of random guys. They have a bunch of random 4-star type guys. I think it would make a ton of sense for him to go after some money at a school that his dad was super successful with, that does have a pedigree in a history of producing crazy good tight ends. RJ Maryland spends 2 years at SMU, moves on to Miami, and I think that would be great for everybody. I think CFF, that would make a lot of sense, although I don't know if it would be better than SMU. It'd be a new quarterback at SMU, potentially Preston Stone. We could have added here, right? Like, technically he's eligible, and he's also, if he has a great season, does he move on to transfer, right?
I'd say that would have been an excellent addition to this episode.
So there's some options there. So I like it. I mean, what's providing some caution for you for Miami?
Well, I don't think he has the size to play a tight end at the Power 5 level. He's 6'4", 217. So he's a very, very small tight end. So I think if he moved up to the Power 5, he almost certainly have to move over to receiver, which is fine. Like, he's a good receiver. Don't get me wrong. The other part of it is, actually, this is a point in your favor. He took 2 official visits during his recruitment, one of which was to Miami. But here's the other part of it. Miami, under Mario Cristobal, definitely hasn't been producing the Miami tight ends we've been seeing recently. They even got 2 studs in recruiting, in Elijah Arroyo and Jaleel Skinner, and neither one of those guys has really panned out. And Jaleel Skinner is actually very similar to RJ Maryland in that he's also kind of a smaller tight end compared to what you would typically see at the Power 5, and they haven't really been able to do much with him. So I'd be a little skeptical. Now, again, I agree with you. There's definitely a lot of connections there. They can definitely build the hype around him with his dad being from Miami. Definitely makes a lot of sense there. But also what makes equal sense to me is if he does want to move back up to the Power 5 level, he was committed to Boston College for a while. And we've seen Boston College in this new coaching staff and previous ones love to utilize the tight end. Just look at George Taeks right now. So if Ryan O'Keefe moves on after next year and Boston College is in need of that kind of unique weapon that they've been utilizing lately, why not RJ Maryland? I think him going to Boston College would also make a ton of sense right there. The other thing is, Miami was heavily involved in his recruitment. It's not like that Miami just completely passed him over and now they see him at SMU. I'm like, oh, wow, we screwed that one up. Yeah, let's get him over here. He chose SMU over Miami. So why would he go back there? It's the same thing for Boston College, but like I'm on stay. I think he stays. I think he's perfectly fine where he is. And you're in transfer. I think he's perfectly fine where he is. He's going to stick around at SMU because he chose that place. He made a very conscious decision. When he had other options, he chose to go to SMU. Nothing else is really kind of pushing him away from SMU unless there's like a coaching change or something like that. What would you say to that?
I think you're using a little bit too much logic and reason in in this discussion. When you concoct this type of cocktail, Jared, you got to get a little weird. Counterpoints to be, I don't see any reason for him to go to Boston College or a similar type school. Like to me, it would be he stays at SMU or he goes to like a top tier program like a Miami. Good point about his size. Miami needs receivers like they need pretty much everything else, I feel like, on offense. So
fair point.
That doesn't exclude him from being a good fit, but it does change the tight end narrative. And you're right, they haven't produced the best tight ends in recent years. They've had some bad decision making with like quarterbacks, offensive play calling, stuff like that, that I'm sure have played a part into it. But it would be, I think it's possible. It's not very likely, but sometimes you just gotta get a little weird. I mean, it's mid to late June. We're gonna get a little weird and create some conversations for people on Twitter this week.
Okay, you're gonna let me hear every bit of it when it actually does happen after the season. So like,
last year our guy was Lou Nichols. Yes. That's who we were talking about needing to transfer. We were trying to like really put it in the atmosphere, and it didn't work out for a lot of reasons.
Weren't y'all trying to push Drake May as well?
I don't know if we were.
There's another big one.
That might have been an Andrew thing, but it wasn't me. But we were talking Nichols to NC State felt like a good fit for us. But I don't remember if there was another one. There probably was at least 5. I just don't black it out.
I mean, he ended up falling apart anyway. So
exactly, yeah. So
maybe it was for the best. Alrighty, that was fun. Again, I appreciate kind of ending on that little note with RJ Maryland and everything, because again, if he does want the money, Miami would be the perfect place for him to go. So like they definitely throw an NIL package at him for that.
So if usually your shows are like 2 hours, so we have plenty of time here, Jared.
Yeah, let's do it.
What about, I added this guy to the list. He's in the same mold of like a Maryland, so there's only 2 options, but EJ Warner feels like a guy that was underrated,
under-recruited,
looked over, right? Goes to Temple. He has a crazy end of the season. A lot of us are high on him, just generally speaking, for CFF and where he's being taken. He's from the West Coast. I mean, his dad played for the Cardinals, so he's from Arizona. Like, wouldn't a move back home, like towards the West Coast, make some sense? Or do you think he's just going to stay at Temple for 4 years or 3?
I think we have to be a little careful in terms of like crowning him too early. Again, I think he's gonna be great for this year. Don't get me wrong, because he plays at Temple and they're like they play in an absolute crappy conference, so there's gonna be plenty of defenses for him to feed on there. He's dual threat. You love everything about that. But his main competition was Daquan Mathis, who I love. He belongs in my heart, but Daquan Mathis is coming off of brain surgery, and unfortunately still had very much lingering effects from that. So there wasn't really much competition for him to take over there. He's a small guy, 6 foot, 190 pounds. Again, quarterbacks, you would want more in the 210, 220 range right there. And then again, if he moved back west, where would he go? Arizona State, like, yeah, they don't have any great options this year, but like Jaden Rashad is their guy of the future. They've been pretty clear about that. Arizona, maybe, but as we discussed earlier, Jaden Delora is going to be there for at least 2 years. So if he goes to Arizona, is he just going to sit behind Jaden Delora for a year? And they got Noah Fafita, and they brought in another guy this year. I forget his name. That's also pretty decently highly recruited. So trying to think of other West Coast places. Colorado
will need
I would say Colorado. I would say I'm sure Dion would be all over the name value there. So, but I could see Colorado. Colorado could be fun, but like, if Sean Lewis is still there, that'd be great.
The problem with Temple, or the thing with the situation is it's Temple. You know, it's a smaller football program. There's not going to be much going on to keep him other than him maybe feeling loyal to the Temple. You know, like there will be more reasons for him to leave if he's successful, because there will be suitors, because he does play a premium position.
It does.
And you never know, people will move around. What if Delora goes pro, or if he graduates and transfers, like then that feels like a great fit. But there's a lot of moving pieces. But I thought he was an interesting name because I think he'll outproduce in 2023 what like a Temple quarterback typically does. And with NIL, I think anything is possible.
Yeah, the thing is, I'm looking at his offer list, at least according to 247, and I know it's not always 100% accurate. I have had players tell me directly that 247 does not always get their offer list correct. So take this with a grain of salt, everybody. But like, there's no Power 5 offers here. There's some fun ones. Like you got Ball State offered him, Hawaii offered him, Georgia Southern offered him. But like, there's no Power 5 offers there whatsoever. So maybe the entire recruiting industry and maybe everybody recruiting, like all the top schools did miss on him. But I do think that everything's kind of pointed in the direction that like he is good for Temple right now. I don't know if he would be successful elsewhere right now. Other things, again, we got time. Preston Stone, what do you think? You brought him up earlier. I thought that we were talking about like, hey, we should have added him to the list. Well, we got time here. What do you think about him?
I mean, it's very possible. He was a big recruit. Wasn't he like the biggest recruit that SMU's had at least at the time?
Yeah, he's the biggest one that they have ever landed themselves. They got some transfers, like obviously Kamar Wheaton was a 5-star and everything, but like in terms of who they themselves landed, he is the biggest one of all time.
He seems like a guy that could leave. SMU does have money. The donor base and the alumni base that's a rich school, right? Like that's a money school. I don't know how much they actually will pay to keep a player of football caliber, right? Well, in the 80s they did a lot of spending. So I could see it happening. What the problem is when you play at these places like SMU, the gimmicky or not your traditional NFL style, I think there should be a thought in like the head of the player, like how does this make me look and to translate into the NFL? Because I would imagine 99% of them have that desire to give that a try. I don't think it happens, but it certainly could. There's definitely some things that move in the favor of transfer.
So I'll go goose here, man. I'll go goose here. Preston Stone has a pretty good year with SMU. Kind of like you said, that gimmicky passing offense and everything. He got offered by USC back in 2019.
I was going to say USC
what if he messes everything up with the Malachi Nelson thing, and he like it's not Miller Moss that messes everything up. It's Preston Stone coming in next year.
Now that's possible for sure, right? Like he's gonna. There's a very real world where he has a big year, right? It's funny, I was not going to say it out loud, but I'll do it now. I was going to jokingly say EJ Warner to USC, but I think people's heads would explode if Lincoln Riley took that. But anyways, yeah, Stone to USC could happen. I mean, Lincoln's shown he's taken transfer quarterbacks. Like aren't all of his more recent, what was his last non-transfer quarterback?
Well, Caleb Williams, technically, he recruited to Oklahoma, and then then Caleb followed him to USC. So I would count that as him building him up himself.
That's fair. So before Caleb, it was like Hurts was one of them, right?
Yeah, he's a
Baker
transfer.
Mayfield,
Yep.
all these.
Kyler
There's a
Murray.
bunch of Murray, so it's
And
in his
then
blood.
I would
He's
say
got a type.
and then Spencer Rattler just completely fell that all fell on its face. But also there's a lot of things going on in that relationship. So like, who knows? But any other names that kind of pop into your head right now, Kay? Because again, we got time. Let me see if I can run down our ADP sheet real quick. See if anybody sticks out to me.
I'll be curious to see the Oklahoma running back room, like what happens.
That one will be pretty interesting.
Because like Barnes is there, Sawchuk is there, and I think I don't know how much do people want to share the carries in a situation like that.
Well, Leppy's been known to kind of have running back by committee, so like people know that. So like when guys like Barnes and Sawchuk sign up for it, they probably go in thinking like, hey, I'm going to get enough carries to get noticed by the NFL, but not too many to where they're going, and I'm going to have at least one big year while I'm there, but I'm not going to get too many to where I tread off those tires. It's kind of the same approach that Georgia takes. Like Georgia, when guys go to Georgia, a lot of people are like, oh my God, it's such a stacked running back room. Why would you go there? Because there kind of is that kind of unspoken promise of like, yeah, you're going to be behind dudes for 2 years. But that third year or fourth year, in Kendall Milton's case, because he kept getting injured, like when you finally get your turn, you're going to get noticed by the NFL. You're going to get drafted by the NFL. So it's probably the same thing going on in Oklahoma. These guys know what they're getting into when they get over there. But Marcus Major, I don't know what he's still doing there. That one's still
he's there. I mean, he's the Steele has the RB. He calls him the RB1. Steele does.
Oh, gross.
Yeah, which could. I mean, I think he's done after this year, regardless. So it just would annoy the running backs, but it wouldn't necessarily impact 2024. Let's reverse it. Let's reverse it real quick. What do you think Michigan does at quarterback after JJ wins the Heisman and goes pro?
Dude, I don't even know who Michigan has behind him because like Alan Bowman,
their backups are like
went to Oklahoma State, right? So like,
yeah. So Alex Orji is a backup, and then they got a 5-star, Jayden Davis.
Oh yeah,
he will be a true freshman. So I don't know how much.
I can see them.
How much Harbaugh wants to do that.
I can see them going a 1-year rental at QB.
Like there's another guy named Davis Warren that's in like the technical mix, but I don't know if any of those guys are all that appealing. If JJ leaves, if he has a great season and Michigan goes into the playoff, which is, I mean, all things considered, is fairly likely of the things that we can predict. So is he going to want to, do you go with a guy like Orji after a guy a 3-star that nobody's really ever heard of?
McCarthy 100% declares after the season. I would agree with you there. Again, I think they either go with one of their older guys for the year. I think it's a replay of the Cade McNamara, JJ McCarthy deal, where like you start with McNamara, Jayden Davis comes in, or a McNamara-like quarterback, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
He plays the whole year. There's the whole like, oh, why aren't we starting the true freshman who probably gives us a way higher ceiling? To be fair, that's probably true. And then you see Jayden Davis get a little bit of action, and then Jayden Davis starts his sophomore year or takes over very early on sophomore year, and then whoever that insert at quarterback for the year was transfers out or just goes to the NFL or something like that. I think it's going to be pretty much a complete repeat there.
Yeah, I think that's very possible. It's going to be really interesting because I don't know if Michigan fans are going to, I mean, Harbaugh's bought himself plenty of time, obviously, after the last 2 years, but like fans get really weird really quick. And I think Michigan could be in trouble because they'll lose. The same reasons why Michigan is in such a good spot for this year will be the same reasons why they might be in a tough spot for next year, which is Corum will be gone, Edwards will be gone.
Yep.
And then JJ probably is gone or could be gone. So then it's like, who do you replace him with? You don't replace that. 2024 schedule is brutal. Mm-hmm. Could they win 7 games? And how do people react to that? So it'll be interesting.
We'll be fine. We'll find out. Again, so much will change between now and next year and everything. They could go out there and Braylon Allen's entered the transfer portal after this year, and then they land Braylon Allen, and they're never worried about running back again after that point. And then, or like maybe they go out and land like, I don't know, something crazy. Like they just get one of the top quarterback prospects out of there, and now Michigan's suddenly going to open it up with a brand new quarterback. So too much could change between now and then. for now, I think that is plenty of it right there, Kay. Appreciate you coming on, man. This was an awesome time. I always love you coming on because you are one of the people not afraid to call me out on my BS and let me know when you think I am either I am being too soft on what I am saying, or you just think I'm dead wrong. So I appreciate that, man. I appreciate our interactions and everything. I really wish I wish we could almost like sell access to the CFF Slack for Campus to Canton because I don't
know about that one. That feels dangerous.
You're not wrong, but again, like I love our interactions in there, man, dude. It is awesome having you on the team. Can you let people know kind of what's going on with you guys over at Burning the Red Shirt? I know you guys are doing your conference previews right now. Those have been awesome so far. Can you kind of give a hint at some of the guests you're bringing on, stuff like that?
So the Twitter account is BTR_pod. We've been doing conference previews one a week with different random guests. We've had Mox has been on. We've had Joe from the CFF site franchise.
Kyle Francis.
Yeah, if you know him. And then we had one more. Brandon the champ, the Michigan State fan.
Yes, sir.
We'll have a little, I don't want to say the name, but we have a little bit of a wife swap situation going on with this week with, Campus to Canton and BTR. So you'll see, I think we're recording Tuesday night, so probably out Wednesday. But yeah, we still have, 6 conferences left. And we'll have some fun. I think we're going to have Froton on at some point, which is always like must-see TV.
Oh, hell
so
yeah.
Just different CFF, CFB touts that wanted to hop on. Jared, you're coming on for SEC, aren't you?
Yes, sir, I am. I was going to let you be the one to say that or not, because I'm like,
that's not the wife swap, but yeah.
No, it is not.
We are having you on for SEC, which will be fun. I don't know when that'll be. I think it's obviously later this summer, but
I think it's later July. So
cool. Yeah, so we're having fun with it. It's made me realize, like, man, we should have had guests on way sooner. Dude,
guests are awesome.
Different people's perspective is fun. It keeps it interesting, and I think we all talk to each other so much that there's like a level of like chemistry that is pretty fun to watch. So we're doing it. It should be pretty fun. It's some of our best episodes too, in terms of like downloads and listens and stuff. So
yeah, you guys are doing a fantastic job over there. I'm currently trying to catch up with them because, again, for those of you who don't know, I started my first job this last week and everything, so I haven't had as much time to listen to podcasts. I will eventually, because again, right now it's me having to watch like training videos right now, so literally I can't listen to a podcast while I'm doing that. But like, when I'm doing my actual work, I can get back to it. But I just listened to y'all's show with Mox in the Sun Belt yesterday. That was a ton of fun. You guys did a great job. I'm about 10 minutes into the episode with Katz and Kyle Francis. Let me tell you, that is funny because, again, Andrew's like, yeah, I'm not doing all this host BS. We're just going to get straight into talking. I'm like, you know what? Fair enough. Y'all do an awesome job over there. So again, if y'all haven't already, go check out their pod, Burning the Red Shirt. They do an incredible job. I won't get back into all of the Campus to Canton stuff, but I will remind you guys over there to, one, go check out the CFF guide. It'll be out July 1st. Kay and I, as well as everybody here at the Campus to Canton CFF team, have been working tirelessly to put that together. It is awesome. You guys are going to love it. And then in addition, I am doing my live CFF mock draft live streams every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, having a different guest on every week to just kind of kick back, answer questions, have a draft in the background. It is awesome. If you're listening to this on Monday, we just did one with Matt Bruning from Campus to Canton. We did one with Mike Bainbridge 2 weeks ago, so go check that out only on the Campus to Canton, or on the Chasing the Natty YouTube channel. And then we got a lot of fun guests coming up for you guys for those in the next couple of weeks, so be on the lookout for those. With all that being said, okay, appreciate you coming on. Appreciate all of you guys listening out there. Hope you guys have a wonderful and blessed week. See ya.